having just separated from my first husband. I think, you know, I call him my rebound, but it's a rebound that stuck around. I think at the time I was in obviously a very needy place. I was not finding it easy, and especially with 4 children under the age of 8, it was certainly a difficult time for me. And my current husband originally, and you're going to laugh at this, he was originally my pool man. And he was one of those blokes who used to come and service my pool every week and would stick around for a coffee and a chat, and I thought, well, that was pretty good. So he actually became quite a good friend through that, and also a little bit of a confidant as well. So he would be willing to listen to my story about, you know, what my husband was doing and blah-de-blah-de-blah, and would give me some support, maybe some suggestions, some advice as I needed it. The interesting thing was, you know, 6 or 12 months down the track, when I was back on my feet and feeling okay about myself, I didn't actually need him anymore in the same way. That probably would have been the time that we would have parted company. And if it was a classic rebound, that would have been the time we would have parted company. Because what attracted me to him in the first place was no longer a need in myself. So we talked about that, and we talked about it quite a bit, and I actually said to him, I don't need you the way I needed you 6 or 12 months ago. I actually need you now as a partner. And we had to talk about, okay, does that mean that I can continue to include any upsets that I had with my ex-husband, you know, and how much of that he needed to be involved in, or whether or not we now needed to really try and separate my issues with my first husband from my current relationship to give this relationship half a chance. I think our saving grace was that we actually had that conversation, that I was able to deal with my stuff with my first husband, with him, or through my counsellor, or through my own friends when I needed it. And my second husband and I were able to actually establish our relationship on an absolutely clean slate. He was able to back away because I didn't need him the way I needed him before, and he didn't want to really be there anyway. So, baggage aside, we then opened the way for us to actually have a relationship that has stood the test of time. Okay, thank you. The topic sort of being, what are the biggest mistakes single people make? Brackets, what are the biggest mistakes that couples make as well? What might be some of them? Some thoughts. What might be some of the mistakes that couples make? Sorry?
Being needy.
Being needy. Absolutely, top of the list. And greedy as well. Yeah. What else what might be some of the mistakes? Making assumptions. Very good. Yeah. Excellent. Not checking things out. You've got to focus back here. Take care of what's going on for us before we can actually move on. They think about relationships as more about getting rather than giving. They don't know how to behave in front of the opposite sex. They don't know how to behave in front of their own friends and other friends and family. They don't understand dating etiquette. Just the pleases and thank yous sometimes can be really important. And certainly something I've learned over the years too. Don't ever, ever, ever stop saying please and thank you in your relationships. Be courteous. Be more courteous to those who are closest to you, more importantly than being courteous to anybody else out there. So remember your pleases and thank yous. They make it all about themselves. Spot on. And here's the balance point. It is all about us, but when we're in a relationship, it's got to be about both of us. They never stop talking, or they don't talk at all. They make the conversation sound like an interruption, or an interrogation. An interrogation, so it's a question and answer. They move too quickly to give or get that first kiss, let alone anything else. They don't pay attention to their date. They don't know the correct way to ask for a date. They have unreal expectations of what it is to be in a relationship. That's another one we're going to look at tonight, a little bit more detail. They don't know who the best kind of person for them is. And we're also going to look at that one. They don't know how to make small talk. Sometimes small talk's important too, just to be able to talk about you know, the weather, what's on the news, what the kids are doing, you know, who said what to whom during the daytime. Enjoy it. Absolutely. Yeah. They don't know how to keep it separate from work. They don't know how. And that comes up so often, that people, you know, their whole works, or their work is their whole life, and they come home and they can't understand why it's not their whole life for their wife or their partner. It's important that sometimes we need to keep work here and we keep home life here, and sometimes it's important to keep them separate. Not always, but we need to be mindful that our partner's not experiencing and not sharing our work environment, so they can't understand really as clearly as we do what's going on in that work environment. They don't know how to ask for a second date, focusing particularly on singles. They're afraid of being rejected, so don't ask at all. As the second one. They aren't sure whether to pay for the date or to accept going Dutch, that is, people sharing the cost. They expect that a first date should be something grand rather than just a cup of coffee or a meeting somewhere quiet, just to learn a little bit more about each other even. They don't know who should make the arrangements, the invitee or the inviter. And I think we do have a bit of a struggle these days in terms of our expected roles as being a female or a male, and who should be asking and who should be inviting, and how does all that and who should be paying, and how do you structure all of that, and do you shake hands or do you give a kiss? You know, all of those things about, you know, how do we find ourselves as a couple when we can be struggling with just how it is to be a male or a female, or a man and a woman in that relationship. And they keep picking the wrong person. Sometimes we do that too.